A little improvising. Yes, yes. Put your hands where we can see them, ma'am. Turn around, make sure you don't have any gun. There you go. All right. So, yes, my name's Bob Norris. I'm your sheriff, and it's a pleasure to serve you. I am here as your sheriff, and I am here as the chief of police for the city of Hayden. We love serving the residents here in Hayden. On May the 25th, we had a workshop in which I was able to address the leaders of our city here in Hayden, and I said, this is kind of a summary. It's all on YouTube. But what I said was that we're your police chief today, and we want to be your police chief in the future. And when Hayden incorporated in 1955, this was a community of a couple of thousand people. Today, it's a community of 16,000 people, maybe even a little bit more than that, and growing at a pretty good pace. So part of that summary was that we went from a town of 2,500 to 16,000. In 2020 alone, we responded, the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office responded to 10,367 calls for service right here in the city of Hayden. 10,367 calls. There's many locations now here in Hayden that we can't send a one-person deputy to. Many. There's many cocktail lounges that we can't send a one-person deputy to. There's many locations that we receive hundreds of calls for service on. And we all know who the big ones are. You know, Walmart, we receive hundreds of calls for service there at Walmart. We receive hundreds of calls for service at Honeysuckle Beach. And Super One, we receive many, many, many calls for service there. So this is not that small community that it once was. It's growing at a very, very rapid pace. How was I received from the city council? Absolutely fabulous. They understand that they want to provide a better level of service here for Hayden. I'm in weekly talks with our city manager on how to do that. And I am very, very encouraged by the direction of where we're going as it pertains to law enforcement services right here for the residents of Hayden. Now, with that, even if there was no growth right now, if there was no growth here in Hayden, we are significantly understaffed. 100%. We have about a ratio of about 0.25 deputies per 1,000 residents here in Hayden. So even if we didn't grow one other single-family residence, we have a little bit of a service problem that we need to address with all of us here in the city of Hayden. Now, with that, I would like to open it up for any questions that anybody might have, and if you don't mind, if you can get a little bit closer, and then I'll repeat the question as you give it to me so everybody can hear it. Yes, sir, in the maroon shirt.
Could you explain what the level of service is for a 24-hour shift?
Yes, I can. So there's basically 168 hours in a week. Right now, we very rarely have, if at all, 2 deputies on at any time. And there's many calls here that I can't respond a one-person unit to. Razzles, the Tipsy Pine, Triple Play, Walmart, the parking lot at Walmart, the thefts inside, absolutely I can't. Many of the family disturbances here in Hayden. So we're constantly drawing resources from other areas of the county so we can service the city of Hayden. Right here. Yes, ma'am.
What is your response time to like a resident call?
Well, I'd like for it to be better.
Yeah.
Okay, so her question was, what was the average response time to a call for service? So as you know, I came in office in January. We're going to set standards of what we want our response times to be. So an emergency call, I want somebody to be there within 10 minutes. With a priority call, I want somebody to be there within 20 minutes. And this is on the very liberal end. Ideally, I want somebody there in less than 5. Priority calls, I want somebody there in less than 10. And a report call, it might take you a while to get there. Now, what is the average response time for a Hayden family disturbance? Right now, probably about 15 minutes. Now, I'm not real happy with that. I'd like for it to be much quicker. Yes, ma'am.
What do you plan on doing in the future with the growth?
Well, what I plan on doing is what I did on May 25th, is that I approached the city council and I said that I need more resources. Even though I'm in charge of providing the resources, I'm not in charge of budgeting and paying for the resources. So that really has to come from city council, such as Hayden, who we are their police department, or it comes from the Board of County Commissioners as it pertains to the unincorporated area.
Sheriff, during
Yeah.
that meeting, you shared about the correlation between increased densities, housing densities, and increased crime. Would you please share that information with us?
Yeah, during that, okay, so the question was, what was the disparity between high-density housing and maybe single-family resident housing? So my experience has been, in the high-density housing, there are generally higher calls for service from a law enforcement standpoint, higher calls for service from a fire response standpoint. We generally have more probationers and more parolees that live in the higher density housing. That's been my experience. Also, my experience has been a manager by the name of Gary Sloan. Gary Sloan had there were about 8 blocks of high density housing. And he, as a city manager, was spending so much money for law enforcement services in this 8-block area. He finally put that under redevelopment, and through redevelopment funds, he purchased all of those and used them for police and fire training. He raised them, and then he put a senior citizen living complex there. And crime went down. And that's been my personal experience, one of my personal experiences with high density housing. But I have many more. Some don't have quite the positive outcome that one had. But that's been generally my experience with it. Yes, ma'am, here in the red.
How many officers do you need to be fully staffed to have 2 officers on duty at all times in Hayden?
Well, that's going to be a discussion that I'm going to have with the city leaders, and they asked me approximately what I'm going to need for that. And other cities of similar size, Hayden being the 17th largest city in the state of Idaho. Cities 14, 15, and 16, 18, 19, and 20 all have a law enforcement budget of approximately $2.6 million. So that's where I believe, based on the statistics, based on the calls for service, based on the relationship that we need with the residents here, it's going to take probably close to about 1.8.